The third day of the session with ICI motto, requesting Ahmedabad branch staff to play ICI motto, and requesting all of you to please put your hand on your heart.
Yaesha supteshu jagrati, Yaesha supteshu jagrati, Kamam 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 kavusho, Pursho nirmimanaha, nirmimanaha, Tadeva shukram, Tadeva shukrada brahma, Tada brahma, Tadeva mritamucchate, Tasmin lokaha, shataha, Sarve taduna kaschana, Etadvaita, 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 etadvaita.
CA Parveen Kumar, the faculty of the session, CA Vikas Jain, the council colleague in the Western region of ICI, Ahmedabad, ICI India, CA Shwetang Rawal, the coordinator of the session, and all the participants. Good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to the third day of Internal Audit National Conference virtual, which is happening. Yesterday was really one of the most important topic where we discuss about the risk management and how can we use risk management in doing internal audit. And yesterday's second session was primarily where we are able to get a lot of practical inputs with respect to what is the expectation of industry, where we have dignitaries from the big corporates like Adani, Torrent Pharma, and now today we are going to focus and discuss about the core heart of audit process, that is the audit field work. A lot of questions are there in the mind of participants about how many samples taken. Whatever number of samples you take, it's always lesser. So, and there is a discussion that there is a need to have a complete verification of all samples. So there is an approach called continuous auditing. There's an approach called 100% audit. And now, what should be sampling size? What should be the testing approaches? And how we have to document? And what should be audit evidence? So for that, we are having today eminent faculty from Delhi, CA Parveen Kumar. I request CA Vikas Jain, my council colleague, to introduce the faculty of the session.
Thank you, Chintan. Indeed, it's always a pleasure to be part of the Ahmedabad branch program, and especially this program has been so well designed and curated. And kudos to the efforts of Chintan, my council colleague and very good friend of mine. He has taken all these efforts to see that this program is really meaningful for the members. And in fact, internal audit is a big opportunity for the members. And yet, we people do not pay that much attention to this particular subject. And many of us, simply for the sake of doing, we are doing the internal audit. But the crux of audit, which is very much important, and is the objective of internal audit is very much different from that of statutory audit. So we need to understand, and the faculty selection and everything has been so great in this particular series. So yes, once again, kudos and compliments to our team and Chintan also. This is my privilege to introduce our learned faculty for today. Parveen Kumar ji is a very senior member, senior partner, and national head of the assurance division of ASA. This organization has 8 offices with almost 700 plus team members. His sir is having experience of almost more than 28 years, and he is a commerce graduate. Besides this, he holds diploma in information system audit and also certification in IFRS from UK. He has also been a member of NACAS, ASB, AASB, and Expert Advisory Committee, besides various research groups and Committee of Indian CA Institute also. His experience of working on various large corporates, number of risk advisory assignments, audit, forensic, fraud investigations, and IFRS transitions of various companies. He has been speaker at various forums, including that of IMT, NAA, ICI, ICSI, ICWAI, CAG, NIFM, MCA, IICA, and many more. He has also written a book on consolidation under IFRS Converged Indian Standards, besides papers and articles published in various renowned journals and magazines. He has been invited to present his paper by reputed institutions in the various other foreign countries like that of Japan, Nepal, Myanmar, Dubai, Singapore, and his personal hobby is marathon running. So his career is also just like marathon running only. So with this brief introduction, I present before you are today's learned faculty, Shri Parveen Kumar ji, and I wish a happy learning to all the members. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Yeah, just me, sorry. Thank you so much, Vikas, for setting the tone and giving introduction of the stalwart personality like Parveen ji. I also take a note of the treasurer of Ahmedabad branch, C.S. Sunil Sanghvi ji, as a part of this particular conference. Now I request Parveen ji, please take this ahead.
So thank you so much, Vikas Bhai, for elaborate introduction. And thank you so much, Chintan Bhai, for inviting me to Ahmedabad. Because it is virtual, I can come within 5 minutes, I could reach in Ahmedabad. And it is really a great pleasure to and a privilege to interact with almost 400 members which are there in this call right now. I think 363 is already showing it. So my heartiest congratulations, Chintan Bhai, for having such a wonderful and such a successful program. I've been going to all various branches, and I think your branch is it's really setting an example and setting a different benchmark for all the branches of the institute. So many congratulations, and since we know each other since very long time, it's a privilege to be there with you, sharing the dais.
My
So
pleasure,
thank you very much. Thank you so much. And I've been, reading and listening what all has been discussed in this particular conference. And I think the way you have created this program is going to help our CA fraternity to a great extent. A lot of small and medium practitioners, they are going to benefit with with the thoughts which are being shared on this platform. And great efforts, Chintan Bhai. So many congratulations to you. And
thank you so much, sir.
So if you allow, I'll share a small presentation with all of you.
Please, sir.
I have prepared one small 23-24 slides presentation. But my idea of sharing with you will be sharing from my experience. Internal audit is such a vast area, and for our CA community, this is one of the bread earners for people who are running their practices and who start their practice. The first assignment which they generally get is some kind of concurrent audit or some kind of internal audit, whether it is for a corporate or for a bank or for for some other entity. So this is a very important topic for all of us, and also critical because anything happens in any corporate, any bank, any entity, the first person who is asked the question, who is put on the answerable side is the internal auditor. So what the internal auditors were doing. So this is a very critical aspect. And I think what you picked up in the beginning, that, what kind of sampling, what kind of approach, what kind of evidence collections internal auditor should have. So I will be sharing a lot from my practical experience and my personal experience of doing a lot of different kind of audits. So I think one of the critical point is the scoping. That is, the key aspect when we talk about internal audit. So when you go to a branch of a bank and you carry out concurrent audit, So that means you will go through each transaction and you will go into detail. So there is a way where you do 100% transaction audits. So, and there are different audits, which is which is a sampling based audit, where you look into the internal controls of an entity and you try to identify which are the control weaknesses. So I have structured my presentation in an interesting format. I know it is post lunch time, and nowadays so many webinars are happening. So I created the presentation from a very practical side, keeping that in mind. So I will first talk about the frauds. Whenever you are doing any internal audit, whenever you are getting into field work, whenever you are picking up some samples, or whenever you are trying to create a report, internal audit report, first thing which you should keep in mind is how the frauds happen, and what are the genesis, and what are the red flags. You need to keep that in mind before coming to your approach. So I'll be sharing 2-3 case studies with you, in which I will share with you how, when we were doing internal audit, what kind of situations we realized and what kind of samples we picked up, how we changed our approach from what we actually planned and what we actually carried out, so that, we could provide the right kind of deliverables to people who are the promoters. Then when we do internal audits, how to make those internal audits very effective, whether it is transaction based or whether it is risk based or sampling based. So I will be talking about how to carry out the field work, and I will be talking about how and what kind of challenges we all face when we do the internal audit. One thing we must be very, very careful and we must be knowing is that internal audit, it carries a huge responsibility. You will be, whenever you are giving any internal audit report, please remember that you are taking some responsibility, that whichever work you have carried out, you have reviewed, that should be part of your report. And more importantly, what you have not done should also be part of your report. That is the most critical part. And I will share with you the challenges which all the internal auditors face. One of the key challenge, which we will elaborate further, is about the data. So you go to start the internal audit and you ask for the data, and the process owner will provide you some data. You come to the observations, you discuss it with the process owners. They agree that, okay, there are shortcomings in this process, we need to improve that. And then you go and take those observations along with the comment of the process owners to the CFO. The CFO will turn up and say, no, you have not looked into the data. It's not supposed to be looked into like this. There is another way of looking at the data. Now, why don't you look at the other part? Why? And he will scold the process owners that, why have you not given this data to the auditors? Let them have a look at that. And then you go back, and your audit committee is happening day after tomorrow. Then you will look at the other set of the data. And in the process, you realize that the observation which you had initially found was having no meaning when you look at the complete data or the complete picture. Many times, the companies which are having these internal audits outsourced to professionals, many times you face a challenge that the process owner will say, no, this is not in your scope. So those kind of challenges are there. I will be discussing some of those, but trust me, it is not easy to carry out internal audit. It is difficult. And that's why, this Ahmedabad branch has come up with this wonderful program on internal audits. So I'll set the tone by discussing 3-4 slides about the frauds. you need to be careful and be aware of these issues because you are going to do the field work. You need to know what are the fraud scenarios. So there was a report, which was sent to the nation. There was a research by ACFE, and this report says that there are huge amount of leakages which happen, and they are due to frauds. And they estimated that only that maybe 5% of the revenue of the entity, they go in as a loss to the fraud. If you calculate overall revenue and overall fraud scenarios, then they anticipated that global amount is a significant one, USD more than 4 trillion. This is a slightly dated report, but the data remains almost in the same range. This report said that 85% of the fraudsters have never been charged or convicted. And most of the time, internal control weakness is the main reason of getting these, for having these frauds. And approximately half of the frauds are caught by or detected by means of tips. So somebody will come and tell somebody, those who are charged with governance, that there is something going wrong. So when I was, doing my DISA, Diploma in Information Systems Audit, so the faculty which came there, he shared a very interesting case study. He shared that, there was a, the banks were in the process of creating a software to calculate the interest. And they hired somebody to calculate the interest, to create a software which will calculate the interest. Now, you are aware that interest is something which touches almost every account in the bank, whether it is a savings account or recurring deposit or fixed deposits on the deposit side, and whether it is cash credit or, whichever loan, term loan, overdraft, loan against, fixed deposits. Interest is given or charged in almost every account in the bank. So what this software company did, they created a hidden account, and they created a program in such a manner that when the interest calculation will be done, up to decimal 2 points, the numbers will be intact, which will go to the account. And anything beyond decimal 2 points, decimal dot, and anything after that will go to that hidden account. And that account will remain hidden, it will not come into picture. And they kept on accumulating the amount, which was 0.00 something from this, 0.00 something from this account, and it carry on from month to month to quarter to yearly. So nobody was aware that this kind of thing. So whenever the banks would bring out the total would match, and that hidden amount will remain there. And those people who were software making company, they were enjoying that kind of money. One fine day, these two people, they had a fight, and the second person went to the bank and told that, okay, this kind of thing is there in your software, you are not even aware of. And then the bank realized that there is a huge issue which is there. So fraudsters are caught maximum times. I mean, almost half of the time they are caught by way of tips. 15% frauds are caught by internal auditors, 13% by the management, and 7% frauds are detected by accidents. And misappropriation, asset misappropriation is the most common fraud, but the amount of loss is relatively less in terms of average. Financial statement fraud are less in numbers, but the total amount is huge. And most of the cases, more than half of the cases, nothing was recovered from the frauds. Now, when you go and do your field work, when you go and pick up your samples, when you go and decide on the approach which you are going to take in the internal audits, and I'm talking about whether you are doing transaction audits That means concurrent audit, whether you have been asked to see and sign every voucher of the bank or a unit or an entity, or you are doing sample based testing and giving your report to the audit committee by giving, pointing out the weaknesses in internal controls. This slide you should always keep in your mind. 85% of the fraudsters displayed at least one behavioral red flag in 85% of the cases. And this is coming from the report which I was talking about, ACFE report. Some cases, which is most common, is that person who is carrying out the fraud will be living beyond means. So how do we know that? So when I was doing my articleship, it was a very small firm. So my boss sent me to a small unit where they had, the booming business of, the film roll developers. It's many years ago, but some of you would recollect that at that time there used to be cameras in which the roll would be there, and those rolls would be collected by the studios, and then there was a lab which will collect those rolls, print the photographs, and will give it to the studios. So we went to do the audit of this lab. And when I reached there as an article clerk, I realized that the salesperson, one of the salespersons, he was riding a very nice bike, Honda bike. He used to smoke very, imported and very costly cigarette. And he used to throw nice parties, and he was, so I, discussed with my other article friend. I said, he looks to be very, from a very good family, and why is doing this small job of a salesperson, going and collecting from the studios and giving money and, collecting those rolls, getting it printed, giving it to them and collecting money. But later on, we realized we did not catch the fraud, but later on we realized that this person was involved in teaming and leading process of fraud. So that means he would go and deliver those photographs to the studio, would collect the money and use it. Next day, he will go to studio number 2, collect the money, and will deposit as if it has been collected from studio number 1. The third day, he would go and collect from studio number 3 and will deposit that it has been received from studio number 2. And in the process, he would, eat away more, he would utilize more money. So he was having very nice lifestyle. So this is a red flag, which is very critical, so whenever you are doing a field work, I'm not saying that everybody who is, flashing and spending money is doing some kind of a fraud, but this is one of the red flag. Then another red flag, there may be the person might be going through financial difficulties. So, we had gone to carry out audit of a bank branch. And, as they say that, whenever we reach to branch, the first thing we do is to count the physical cash. And it was a village branch, very remote area. And we reached quite early in the morning, and, we were there in the branch before it opened. So when the branch opened, we requested the branch manager and the cashier to let us count the cash. And when we counted it and we got it tallied with the cash book, we realized that, one packet of 50 rupee note was missing. So we were surprised that, these bank, they have many very, very strong controls. Every locker room will have 2 keys. Every day, the manager and the cashier would, lock the key. One key will go with cashier, the other key will go with manager. They will sign off, both of them. How can this, this can take place? So we were surprised, and even the bank manager was surprised. But later on, we realized, and during the day, we came to know that manager used to be easygoing. He used to trust everybody in the branch. and he would not go to the strong room, and he would just ask the cashier to, lock and bring the keys and bring the cash book, and he would sign off. And that a day before, the cashier's son was unwell, very unwell, and he had to go and buy some medicine. So he was, he had that opportunity. He picked up that packet, thinking that when I'm, in a few days my salary will come and I'll replace this money. But in between this, audit happened. So financial difficulty is another red flag. So when you are doing a field work, when you are doing a sampling, or whichever company you have gone through, you are going to do the internal audit, please remember that if a person is going through financial difficulty, there is always a possibility. This is a red flag. And sometimes, usually, close association with a vendor or a customer is also a red flag. This you would see in most of the cases where you will find that fraud is happening. The vendor or the customer will have a very close relationship with the person who is carrying out the fraud. Then, this we had seen in case of Nirav Modi scam, excessive controls or unwillingness to share duties or refusal to take vacation. So the same person sitting on the seat for a very long time, he would, so this is a red flag for you. Recent family problems is also one of the red flag. And also, if you would have seen, this Netflix series, Too Good to Be True, a small clerical staff spending so much money on the gold and taking family out for vacation by air and not asking for advance or anything. Too good to be true. They are syndromes. So when you are doing internal audits, please keep your ears and eyes open and see whether there are such kind of syndromes, too good to be true. Then, if you're dealing with the government offices, or if you're dealing with the, people where in the departments where there is corruption, you will find the red flag of abnormally slow in performing routine work. It's very common. And then social isolation is also one red flag. So these red flags, they are visible when you are doing internal audits, when you are doing the field work, when you are on the ground. You need to see if there are red flags. You need to be a little more careful. So what I am suggesting is to be more careful when you see these kind of, one of these red flags. So every fraud would have, a triangle. It gets completed. Every person who carries out a fraud will always have some kind of rationalization in his mind or her mind. So they would always feel, that whatever they are doing right. So that is with, that's a, it's a psychological issue, but it's there. They will always have an opportunity. Like, the cashier in the branch of the bank, which I shared with you the case. The knowledge and ability to carry out fraud will be there when there will be an opportunity for that person. And there is always some kind of pressure or some kind of motivation or some kind of intense incentive will be there when they carry out the frauds. So nowadays, this is a lot of companies, they have laid off people, or they have reduced the salaries. So be careful that there may be somebody who will just say that, okay, fine, the company has given me less salary, so what, I am taking a little bit advantage of this situation. When I have an opportunity and I need money, I can do it like this. So there is always, so this triangle you need to be careful about. Most of these frauds, they got generated from, various situations. There can be an error by a person, but nobody will notice it. So he realized that, okay, nobody will notice if there is an error on my part. And he keeps on repeating, and he gains from that error. Then system deficiencies or complacency or weak controls, the bank manager, he would not, step out of his cabin and go to the cash room and will tally. So although the system is there, but the control is weak because that system is not being implemented. Sometimes you will see, and especially the new companies, the lack of accounting knowledge of top level executives, they also results in some kind of opportunity for the people who are they are the top people or the promoters. They are too much dependent on that person. So when I started my career, I got a client. He was giving me some kind of retainership, and I realized that the person who was running the business had no knowledge of accounting, and he was too much dependent on the accountant. So whatever the accountant will bring, he would trust that, and that accountant got in connivance with the vendor, because vendor gave some expensive gifts. On the Diwali, they sent a colored television. At that time, colored television was a very big thing. So and then we realized that this person was giving undue advantage to that vendor or that customer. So lack of accounting knowledge at the top level is also one of the red flags. So one very interesting case we realized in one of the audits which we were doing. So this was having a factory in a plant which is a few hundred kilometers away, and the CEO and CFOs were sitting in the in the urban area, and the plant was run, and there was some in charge over there in the plant. We were not doing transactional audit. We were not doing 100% checking of the voucher, but as a quarterly audit, we had to visit the plant. We realized that the material from the plant was taken out. There were control weaknesses. One of the surprise check, when we were there, so our supplier material came. So in the bill, let us say, for example, the items were written that, okay, 100 items are being sent, but on physical count, we realized that only 65 items were there. So there was a short receipt of supply material. And later on, we realized when we spoke to some people who were, ex-employees, they said it's very common thing there. And then whenever there was any question asked at the head office level, they would always change the bill of material, and they would say, no, this thing was not available, so we are changing the bill of material. So that, that changing of bill of material too many times was something which created a suspicion. When we went into detail, we realized that this company was also doing subcontracting work, and they were sending some money there, some equipments, and later on the installation was not happening. So it was taken away, and the people who were at the helm were taking advantage of that. And then damages which were charged by the client for delayed work was not passed on. That penalty was not passed on to the subcontractor, and was never recovered, because naturally they were taking advantage from that. And then procurement, one of the most critical and most common area of financial leakages. The vendors were fixed. They were always sending the same, they were using the same vendors, and no quotations were asked from anyone. And sometimes we realized that only the invoices were there. Procurement from non-existing existent vendors were also there. So when we brought up our observations and we shared it with CEO and CFO, they had taken it very, very seriously, and they took some action against the people who were in charge of that location. Kickback, it is one of the most common thing when you're doing internal audits. You will realize that this is in many cases, you will find that kickback and bribing is being offered to the people. And again, you will realize that the people who are head or of procurement, or who are head of finance or accounts, they would be, given bribes by the people or the project manager. And we realize that, the closest competitors, the two bidders, they were, bribing him, and this person was giving information about bids to that person. Then in one case, it was very interesting. And when you are doing internal audit fieldwork, you can also check out that, if the bids were received, most of the bids are from the same building, printed in the same pattern. It looks like they just changed the name and, just to complete the formality of collecting bids. So this case is very, very common. In this particular case, which I am sharing with you, 6 out of 10 bids which were shortlisted had very, very close price range and similar experience tenure, consistent in terms, and they were, from the same building, same complex. So they were adjoining office numbers. So we could immediately realize that there is some kind of incorrect things, some kind of incorrect practices which are happening in this case. So when we carry out internal audit and when we are doing the field work, one thing which we need to be very careful is about the confidentiality. When you are sending your teams, or when you are dealing with a company, let us say you are dealing with a company or their branch or their depot, and this company is a listed company, confidentiality plays a very, very important role. So, whether you are able to find something, something wrong, whether you are not able to find something wrong, but leaking out the information is a very, very serious matter. So what practices I had seen, that in some of the firms, so where even the team members who are going on these large assignments, they are taking a kind of affidavit from the team members in addition to the articles deed, that I will not leak out any information, I will not discuss it with my family or even the friends, or even casually discussing it within the office also. Nowadays, the institute has allowed company secretaries and ICWAs to be the partners in the firms of chartered accountants. So when you are doing an internal audit, it is important to send the team members, who are having those kind of skills and competencies. So if you are pitching for a job to a large company, then and let us say they are a real estate company, then they would say that whether you will have an engineer, in your team, in case you are going to a, large company's internal audit, they would always want to have that kind of skills and competence. And generally, the basic principles nowadays, what are being discussed and what are being followed by these companies, they are risk-based audit. And I believe there is already one session which has happened on risk-based audit. So I will not dwell more into more details. So system and process focus will always be there. Whether you are doing transaction-based audit, whether you are doing concurrent audit, whether you are doing 100% checking, but you will always need to do a system and process focus. You will need to keep that in focus. Because once you have found that there is a mistake, you will need to go to the root cause, why this mistake was there, why the control failed, why there was a leakage, or why there was a error which went unnoticed. And many times the company hire us for this purpose, that anything goes wrong, they should be able to bring out. So participation in the decision making is also one of the basic principles of internal audits. What I have seen is that some large companies, when they have internal audit department, they will, that internal audit department the poor guys will go to one department, the other department, and internal audit will always be a low priority for marketing team, for finance team, for other teams, because they feel that internal auditors are there to check the processes. But we need to be sensitive to multiple stakeholders' interest when we are doing the internal audits. So what kind of testing, what kind of sampling we should have when we are doing internal audit? We need to keep in mind the internal audit charter. I think somebody is raising hand, but I would request Chintan Bhai that we can take the question answers once my presentation is over.
Yes,
So,
I think Vicky will take at the end.
yeah, so Mr. Naveen Goyal, we will take your questions, or we will understand your thoughts. First, let me complete the presentation. So we need to keep in mind that there is a internal audit charter, and there is a business requirement. And whenever you will carry out your internal audit, you will create your audit plans accordingly, and you will release and share these this audit plan to the process owners. So before starting your picking up the samples, or before starting deciding about what kind of testing we need to do, what kind of approach, you need to finalize your scope, and I will be discussing what kind of scope you should be talking about. So when you carry out the field audit, you need to understand the process. That is one of the most critical aspect. When a company is getting their internal audit done for a very long time, they already have their checklist, and they appoint new auditors. They ask them to go on the field and start doing the work. But actually, whichever audit team is going there, they need to first understand what is the process. Let me first understand. It may take a couple of days, or if it may take few hours, depending on what kind of companies you are entering into. But understanding of process and walkthrough is very critical part of your audit planning before you actually start your field work. And you need to identify which are the risk areas where you will have the issues. I remember once I went and I was sitting with one friend of mine. He had sent there is articles to carry out an internal audit, and he was taking a reporting. So he asked that article clerk, "What have you done?" He said, "Sir, I have checked the whole revenue today." He said, "What actually you did?" He said, "Sir, I opened their laptop, their computer, and I kept their voucher files in my hand, and I checked that every voucher was there entered in their computer, and every voucher was there, so they did not miss on any voucher." But then he sent the boy back, and he was smiling. He said, "This poor guy, he wasted the whole day, because this company is using the tally. The ledger is on the screen is tally, and the vouchers are tally vouchers only." So what he actually did, he ticked the voucher with the ledger only. So he said, "These days I need to train people, and I need to tell them what is supposed to be done, what is not supposed to be done." So you need to identify what are the areas which you need to be careful about. And suppose if you are doing audit of payment process, then you need, and if they are if they are having online transfer, so what is the risk area, and how these risks are being mitigated. And you need to identify that in your audit procedures, which areas you will be looking into. So one of the NBFCs, we were doing internal audit, and we realized that there is an area where they give funding to borrower, and then that borrower will submit only unaudited financial statements. So we said that this is a significant area which the team need to look into. So nowadays, most of the listed companies and most of the large companies will have risk control metrics with them. So I think that becomes your starting point if that company is already having risk control metrics. So you need to understand which are the risk area, what are the controls, which are the controls you need to test. And I'm talking about a large company, and I'm talking about where they already have IFCFR, in place. So once you have got your data, once you have got your field work done, you will certainly come up with an observation. So nowadays, a lot of people, what they do is they pick up the whole data and put it into some kind of audit tool. That can be Excel based tool, or that can be Idea, or that can be so many other tools which are available. And they'll try to find what are the trends. So one very interesting point, which we realized when we were doing audit of a manufacturing company, their sale had a very unique. So when we put that thing in the Excel, and when we saw the charts which were coming out, very interesting point was that all of a sudden on 26th or 27th of the month end, their sale would go very up. And it was happening every month. And then we were, surprised that, why the whole sale, whole month, they are not able to do that much sale, which is being done in the last 3 days of the month. So when we, went into deep, we realized that that sale, some of the, the agents, CFAs, they were actually putting up the invoices in the last 3 days in order to get that incentive and the commission, which was based on the turnover. And in the next month, slowly and gradually, they will actually sell the goods later on. But the sale was booked in advance on last 3 days of the month. So when we brought it out, and then management took action, and they said that, okay, there is something which we need to go deeper. So when the material is going out, so they changed the process in such a manner that till the time, the actual sale is happening, they will not be cutting the invoices. But, when you apply those analytical tools in your, or it can be very simple. You just plot your weekly revenue, and you will realize that there are ups and downs. And I'm sure when you are doing internal audit of a large company, or a medium-sized group, you would put their HR into metrics, and you will realize that some of the months will have abnormal numbers. You will immediately come to know that, okay, there is something which you need to see, whether they released the bonus within this month, or whether there was something extraordinary happened. So whatever your observations are, and this is the crux of today's session, you must issue audit query memorandum, which is called AQM. Write a question that this is our observation, and send it to the process owner through email. Create a trail. That is, if you will ask me that, okay, Praveenji, we have only 2 minutes. So can you speak about internal audit? I will, I will say only one thing, that whatever questions you are asking while doing your internal audit, ask that question in writing. Nowadays, it is very easy. Write an email that we observe that there is an abnormal sale in this month. Can you explain? That's it. When the management will answer, or the process owner will answer, you will get a lot of lead from there. But in the process, you will protect yourself. In case some inquiry happens in the future, in case some regulator comes, and in case they ask you a question that, as internal auditor, why did you not ask this question? You can always say that I asked this question, I was given this answer, and on the basis of this answer, I was happy, I was unhappy, I put that in report, I did not put that report, but it did not escape my attention. I was not negligent in my duty. So most important aspect is to raise, your query through email or through whatever way, you can. But you need to then, discuss it with the process owner only. Before you go to CEO, CFO, or the audit committee, because ultimately that process owner or the CEO or CFO will be sitting with you and answering the audit committee chairman what was the weakness and how this observation came. Like I mentioned that, once the process owner agrees with you, you go to CFO and CFO will not agree with you, because CFO will be scared of CEO and he will say, no, this point is, your observation is incorrect. It doesn't happen in our company like this. We have, there is a reason, there is always and this process owner is not aware of what other departments are doing. So you need to look into the data from a different angle. And once you are able to, get more data, your observation dimension will change. So this is a critical part that once you have your documentation in place, you can always go back and say that this is what your process owner has told me. And this is one reason why whenever we are doing internal audits, 3 days before the audit committee or 4 days before the audit committee, the audit team will spend late evening hours sitting with CEO, CFO, fine-tuning the language and trying to see which point will go in the report, which point will not go in the report, which point will go in the executive committee report or executive report summary, or which point will go in the detailed report. So you will need to have that kind of audit discussion. And trust me, if you take process owner into your confidence, you will be very, very comfortable. Otherwise, CFO in the meeting with CEO will be very harsh on you, and CEO in the audit committee will ask a different kind of question from you. That have you looked into that data? I think you were not given the proper data, and why did you not ask from the team? And we have seen the situations where you try to bring up your honest point to the audit committee, and CEO will realize that it is coming on to him. So he would, he would become very, very aggressive, and he would take the discussion in a different format. So what is required in any internal audit, whichever testing or sampling or fieldwork you are doing, you need to bring people on the same page. This is very important part. So your people with whom you are having a discussion, whether the process owners or the CFO or the CEO, they should be aligned. So many times people ask that what is the objective of internal audit? You are working from a large company. I would say that whatever observations are there, people should be aligned with those observations and your recommendations. Otherwise, you will go and in the audit committee and you will say that, okay, these are my observations and these are my recommendations. The CFO or CEO will stand up and say, sir, this is not practical, we cannot have this. And then the audit committee chairman will turn back to the auditors and say that, you should have had a discussion with them beforehand, before coming to the meeting. Why are you wasting our time? So, these, these are very practical aspects which I am sharing it with all of you. And then, you need to agree on the action plan with with these people, and then only you should have your audit report. So whatever field work you have done, you need to have an executive summary and a detailed report, so that tomorrow somebody will say that, why have you not shared? So you can always say that, okay, this point was there in my detailed report. And then you will need to go and make a presentation to the senior management. So this is the approach which I would recommend you should be having. I think in most of the engagement, the senior person or the partner should be involved in internal audits, at least to have a discussion with the management to understand the tone at the top, what exactly they want, whether they just want to comply with the regulation of having an internal audit, or they are really looking forward to have some kind of feedback from you or value addition from you. So one of the companies we were doing internal audits, so their promoter sat down with us, and he told me that what we are looking at is some kind of benchmarking if you can do for us. I need to know what other companies in my industry are doing. If you can find some data, if you can speak to your other, people and other, if you, even if you bring informal data and you let me know what, other people are doing, how they are controlling their wastage, how they are controlling their man hours, all those kind of stuff. And then, it is important for you as partners to have constant feedback from the client to understand what is, in case there is something which is going wrong. And if you are a medium-sized firm, and if you are a large firm, you need to involve the cross-functional teams in, different kind of experts can be there. And then you will need to do the benchmarking, and your team should be equipped with the audit software, the analytical tools and caseware, or, nowadays Excel is also being extensively used by people who are doing internal audit. But very important is to understand the process and document whatever you are doing with the client. So when you are doing the audit, when you are doing the planning, when you are doing the data analysis, or whether you are doing sample testing, you need to understand that collecting the audit evidence is one of the key aspects. So you may observe 100 things, but if you are not having any evidence, they are all useless. If you are observing only 5 things and you have evidence to communicate and to prove your point, it is very important to have your audit evidence in your place, in your file, or in your soft file, or in your laptop. So basically, whatever planning you have done, whatever field work you have decided you will do, whether you will, whichever sample you will pick up, how, some people, they use random sampling. Okay, out of these many line items, I'll pick up only 100. What is the worth? It is covering 10% or it is covering 50%. Or some people will say, I'll pick up only one transaction. That's it. I'll do a detailed walkthrough and I'll tell you where are the leakages and where is the possibility, and then I will go through the details. But one transaction, they will go in quite detail. And so when you are doing a planning, what you need to do is to understand what kind of audit evidence you will have in place. But if you are doing a concurrent audit, and if you are doing 100% transaction audit, then how do you collect? You cannot keep a backup of the whole unit with you, that okay, I checked all these vouchers. But you can always make a chart that okay, today these many vouchers came, this was the amount, and this is what we did. 1, 2, 3, 4. I checked the date, I checked whether it was approved, I checked whether it was signed off, I checked. So whatever you did, you need to have a trail, audit documentation, audit evidence, whosoever does it. So whether your article has done it, whether your assistant manager has done it, or whether the partner was involved, you need to collect evidence in order to have an understanding what planning you did, what data analysis you did, what reports you extracted, and what kind of sampling techniques you applied, and what kind of exception reports you had created. So when you are preparing the report, please remember that reports are done in 2 manners. One is executive summary, which will go to the top level. I mean, the audit committee chairman, they do not have time to read through the whole observations and recommendations. So they need to understand what are the key issues. And then the detailed report should be with the people who are the management people, so that they can take action later on. Scorecard, I will show you an example what kind of scorecard you can share with them. But frankly speaking, statutory compliances are one of the most critical aspect in any quarterly internal audit. The management is very concerned nowadays, very much concerned. They want to know where all they are going wrong. And then you can put your observations in high, low, and medium risk. And then you need to go to the root cause. And when you are doing your field work, it is very important to understand the root cause and also give them the impact. This is, so here is a company of turnover of, let's say, 500 crores. and you have brought in an observation which is having a total impact of, let's say, a couple of few thousand rupees, the audit committee will not be interested in that. And if you are doing audit, so I will share with you one very large company with the turnover of more than 50,000 crore. And there was an observation which was having a total impact of 5-6 crore rupees. So we wanted to take this point up in the audit committee, and we started talking about it. The audit committee chairman said that I do not have time for such small issues. So it is always relative which company you're talking about and how much money you're talking about. What is the impact? Whether the impact is significant, it is worth the time of audit committee, or is it not? Then you need to identify, and if possible, please classify your observations into whether it is value addition, whether it is related to compliances, whether it is related to controls, or it is related to policies. So this is how the statutory compliance snapshot will be. These are just small examples just to give you a flavor that let us say you are looking at tax compliances, whether TDS, green dot, whether there was a delay in tax deposit, amber. So that means there are some improvements which are required. But otherwise, in case there is any labor law non-compliance, that would go in red. Or wherever there is a risk for audit committee members, that will always go into red dot. And then, you can give a risk response matrix also, that, okay, you had total 8 observations. Some of them are in red, some of them are in yellow. And then, what kind of business flow chart you have understood, whether they have, if they have made it, fantastic. If they have not, then this can be your value addition. When you are sitting with the person, the process owner, you are understanding what will be the process, then you can draw these kind of charts, and very easy programs. Any article clerk can also draw it, and you can share it with the management, which can be very helpful for them. And then your observations and recommendation, that, okay, these are my observations, these are the management comments, and what is the responsibility, and what is the target date. So I was talking about creating a documentation, and before starting your internal audit, this is just to give you an example, that scoping is required. So let us say a company having offices, plants, regional offices, you need to understand which are the audit areas, and which are going to be done on quarterly, which are going to be done on half yearly, which are the processes which you will look at on annual basis. And then you can, each area, you can go into detailing, whether this thing is matching, whether the compliance to, this particular planogram is happening, not happening, displayed stock is being rotated, not rotated, all kind of things you can put in your process, sub-process, sub-area, and then you can share it with the management when you are, preparing your audit plan, when you're going to start your field work. And as discussed earlier, your risk control matrix will be your beginning point. So if the company has got this kind of matrix made, where they have identified processes and sub-processes, and they have identified the control objectives, and what are the risks involved, and how the entity is doing the controls, whether so basically what I'm trying to convey is that if you are picking up your samples from this risk matrix, it will be very quick to know whether this control is effective or not. This is when you are doing a control-based approach in your internal audits. If you are doing 100% audit, 100% transactions, you are you have been asked to verify, then you will be creating your own process, that, okay, this is how things will come to me, and this is how my team will pick up. This is what kind of ink, what kind of tick, what kind of stamp they will be putting up, and who will be putting their initials. So you need to be very sure about the kind of documentation trail which you are creating for your own self. And then this process flow chart, this will be adding value to the client. Just a snapshot of there are internal audit standards which are there. I'm sure some session will be there on these standards also. If not in this particular session, maybe some other session. But these standards have become very important and very critical nowadays, because people have started talking about what is the basis of your internal audit, how have you carried out your internal audit, and how have you managed your internal audit, what are the objectives of your internal audit. So these standards will give you a flavor of what actually are expected from you. So this is my last slide, when I'll be talking about the challenges which we face in the internal audit. As mentioned earlier, the data, getting the right data is one of the key challenge in any internal audit. So whichever data you will pick up, you need to have the right source from that data. So if you are picking up data from their ERP system, you need to have a direct access, because what we had seen in one of the cases, they were having SAP into place, and the audit team went and asked for some data. They removed some columns which were giving some kind of indication, and they provided that amended data to the audit team. So when audit team did their analytical trend analysis and all those kind of stuff, and then we went to CFO, and they realized the CFO, scolded the process owner in front of the auditor that why have you not given them the correct data? So please give them the correct data. But they were having only 3 days in the audit committee meeting. So they had to burn midnight oil to get the whole data again and the whole analytical. So whatever they were doing since last 15 days, that went into drain, because audit team was very excited. Oh, we found something very significant. There is something wrong which is happening here, and here is a clue, here is a trend, here let's make our report like this, and let us give a suggestion for the improvement in the area. But ultimately they realized that they were working on the incorrect data. So process shortcoming, many times people would not like their shortcomings to be reported. So they would always find a reason, they would always try to justify. It is very, very common. It's very natural. You go and tell your child that you are wrong, and child will say, no, I am not wrong. There was a reason for that. So process shortcoming, nobody would accept. The junior most person in the process will always accept. Yeah, I understand there should be an improvement. But as you go higher up, you will find that people are resisting. And then, they always, there may be a situation that there is a pressure from the top. So many times internal audit head would get a phone call from the CEO that no point should go to the audit committee, which will have an impact, or which will have, some kind of scolding for him. You need to understand industry practices. Every time you go to the company and pitch for internal audit work, they say that we want to know what is happening in the industry. Very difficult. The data is not available. Nobody will display how much wastage is being done in my plants. Nobody will say how much, how I am able to improve the efficiency of my team members. So you will find that there is always a question about benchmarking and industry practices, but the data will not be available. So you will find this always a challenging situation. And then drafting observation. You found that there is something wrong. You go to the process owner and say that you did this thing wrong. He will never agree to it. He will have 100 answers to tell you, no, it was not wrong. It happened like this. So, we had to do like this because there was no other option. So you will need to draft observation in such a manner that, even at the CEO level, that the observation is acceptable. And when you take it to the audit committee, the people against whom you are talking, they do not get offended. So it's a very tricky situation here. And this is a role of internal audit. One of the most tricky point is how do you draft your observation? So you found something wrong. One way is that, there is something wrong happened and this person is culprit. Second way of saying is that this thing we observed, this was wrong, but actually it happened because of the weakness in the internal control system. The person against whom you are, so you are not making the person culprit, you are making the system culprit. So once you draft your observation in such a manner that, you are trying to give improvement areas in the process, your report will be much more accepted. So I think these are the challenges which all the auditors they face, and internal auditors need to be aware about, these challenges which are there. So I will just do a recap. So we looked into the field work, the testing, the approach, and the way observations are supposed to be put up before the audit committee. So we looked into some fraud cases. We looked into some red flags. When you are doing field work, you need to be aware of those red flags. You need to see how the when you are picking up the samples or when you are doing the your internal audit, what kind of careful attention you need to give in order to improve the observations. And you also should be aware that, okay, last 4 days or last 3 days before the audit committee or before the circulation of internal audit report to the audit committee, you will need to burn midnight oil and you will need to put your best resources. So keep their time free on those days, so that when the CFO will question your data and will question your observation, then you will have time to sit back and do the work again. So this is my brief deliberation. In case we have some questions, I will be glad to take it up. And in case you want to, raise your hand or whichever way, I think I leave it to Chintan Bhai to, take up the question and answers.
Parveen ji, very wonderful presentation. And one of the most important things is that you really touch upon the practical aspects. When you're sharing the case studies, everybody was live with you. They just believing that, yes, we all are in the same boat. Because when you share that, when we discuss the point with the process owner, they may accept the point, but at the higher level, when we put the point, there will be a lot of resistance, which everybody observe. And then sometimes we feel that our point was wrong. So I think we have to be very, very taking careful. Documentary evidence is one of the most important thing, which you said one thing, that writing in email, put everything on email, that will only speak. Words are going to change over the period, but not email. So I think very useful tips. Let me just look at questions from participants, if any. Yeah, Ashutosh ji has asked question. If you're able to see the questions, or I can go through the questions. Parveen ji.
Yeah, please go through the question.
Yeah, sure. While system walkthrough for SOP or process verification, most of the time employees are not cooperative or ready to show the working. Then how to handle the situation like this? Please guide.
Yeah, this is many times, these processes are documented just for the sake of showing it to the people. So we have seen it many times that when we go and pick up an internal audit assignment, we realize that, they will say, no, we have all the processes in place. And when we actually go to the process owner, they are not even aware of that process book. But this is a practical challenge. So what I recommend is that when you sit with the people, the first meeting, when doing walkthrough, then please also keep noting down, their, like I mentioned, the kind of a flow chart, so that, when you are bringing up your observations, you can always say that there is a gap between what is written and what is being followed. So one way of telling is that whatever is written, nobody is following it. The other way of saying is that there is something which is written, there is something which is being followed, there is a little gap which needs to be improved. So you will be having a very effective presentation in case you put up your points in that manner.
Great. Another question Ashutosh has asked, how to do benchmarking? Please explain some benchmarking techniques you practically implemented.
So we were doing audit of one FMCG company. So I'm telling you inside secrets. So they wanted to know the benchmark, how other companies are doing. So I spoke to one friend of mine who was working in another large company. And then I asked my partner that, okay, you had some relative who is working in the third large company. We spoke to them informally. I went to their office and, because we had to prove a point that since you have appointed us, we are able to add value. So I informally spoke to them. And then in the audit committee, I said that, okay, this data I am having, it is informal data. I cannot share with you authentic data. But, but this is what I believe is being followed by these companies. And once they asked that, can you share the names and all? I said, sir, you would not like your data to be leaked out to them, right? So same way, I am in a position to share their data with their names with you, but this is what is being followed. So benchmarking, many times the reports of the chambers of commerce, like CII will bring up some reports. So those, reports have they are very handy and they can be authentic benchmarking data. And many times data is there in the annual reports also, but audit committee and all, they will not be bothered about that data. They will be bothered about the intricacy, the detailing. So if I'm manufacturing juices, then which line will have how much wastage, and so those kind of data they would be interested in. Only way you can get it through your informal network and informal sources. But it's very difficult part. But sometimes the benchmarking reports are presented. Sometimes the research papers are there. We can take, this is what Santosh ji also mentioned, that research reports are available. Yeah.
Okay. Another question from Ashutosh ji. How to handle pressure of top management like CFO for medication of report?
Sorry, I did not understand this question.
Yeah, I think medication may not be exactly the right word, but I think he's saying how to handle pressure of top management like CFO, because they may not be ready to accept your points. So if they're hesitating, how can we ensure that our point is get accepted at top level?
So the irony is the CFO and CEO will give you appointment. They will fix your salary, remuneration. And if you are working for the company, they will fix up your salary. And in the audit committee, you will need to go and report against them. So it will be really a very challenging task. Certainly it goes. So that is where I said, that you need to draft it in such a manner that it should not be offending the person. It should be in the direction of improving your system. So once you are drafting your observations like that, then it doesn't become a challenge.
Okay. Mr. Aryan Khare has asked question. As you pointed that the report to make more acceptable by the senior management, the auditor should emphasize on lapses in process rather than blaming the person, carrying the person. What are the exceptions?
Fraud. If that person is doing a fraud, if that person is taking bribes, if that person is taking undue advantage, then you need to not wait for audit committee meeting. You need to immediately report. So then, the system will come later on, but fraud reporting has to done on a real-time basis. And this is one of the, major exception where you will not, otherwise you will also be part of that, uh, uh, financial misappropriation.
Ravindra Khareji has asked question, is it always necessary to have agreement with auditee or process owner before reporting, or can report disagreement also?
It is always better to have an agreement, because if they are not aligned, so remember your report will be discussed at different levels. If your report is not aligned and you're sitting with the CFO 3 days before the audit committee or 4 days, and process owner or the auditee is having a dispute on your observation, then ultimately, nobody like to listen to conflict situations. So suppose you have found a observation and you go to the audit committee and CEO say, no, I don't agree with this. The audit committee chairman will not appreciate you. He will say, that why don't you align your observation with them first and then come to us? And same goes with CFO, same goes with CEO. So if you are not aligned with CFO, the CEO will, not listen to you. Because for them, it's these people are reporting them day to day. So whatever your observations are, and of course, yes, when you have a serious disagreement, then you can always make a report that, okay, I don't agree with whatever they're saying, but we have an evidence that there is something going wrong in this company, in this process.
Great. Now, obviously, I think the Nishit also mentioned the same thing. We should have agreement. Otherwise, what happens that all our positivity will go away, and there are a lot of issues that occurs. There is not objective of internal auditor.
Yes.
Another question from Ravindra Khareji: if there is only single bidder come for procurement and process involved with it, how to break that chain or how to address that issue?
Whenever the processes are created, and especially the bidding processes, the SOPs will always have these kind of contingency that only if there is only one bidder, or if there may be a situation that you are dealing in a particular item you are manufacturing and there is only one vendor in your nearby vicinity. So you will have no other option but to go to only that vendor, and you cannot call the bids. So you need to document. So there must be some kind of DOA, some kind of approval authority who will allow you to, accept only one bid also. I'm talking about private companies, but in case of public companies also, private sector, public sector companies also, if there is only one bidder, they have a process that they will open the bid again. And even then, if there is only one bidder, then they will go to their board that, okay, we did bidding twice, but only one bidder is coming. So please allow us to take that person because our, this thing is required to be done. So it is fine. I mean, there is always a way out.
Yeah, and I think in his question, he's saying that if there is some suspect about a process owner involved into a particular, then how can we really ensure and how can we address this particular issue?
Yeah, we can always, if you are having that kind of mandate, you can always go into investigative mode and look into, like I mentioned about the red flags. So if you find something fishy, you can always take a permission and go into investigative mode and report against, that kind of wrongdoing. And that is the whole purpose for which I shared my initial slides, that whenever you are doing a field work, you are doing internal audits, there is always a chance that you will be the first person who will come across the fraudster. So you will need to be very careful about.
Yeah, I think all questions seems to be answered, and because it seems that you have got many practical questions, that's why very few questions are with there. And it's really a wonderful experience, Parveen ji, and we are looking forward to call you once again, maybe more detailed, and probably also on highlighting on SIA, which can be taken practically and understand. SI is something which is generally believed to be more theoretical, like other standards. So I think, but if we have your kind of presentations where you're going to also include the practical aspects, I think it will become more interesting. So looking forward to invite you once again.
Thank
And
you so much. Thank you.
yes,
Thank you, Chintan Bhai. It was a great pleasure interacting with all of you.
sure, sir. And I request CH Vetang Raval, the coordinator, who is coordinating the whole event from backside and ensuring that everything goes perfectly, to offer a heartiest word of thanks to him, sir, as of formally.
Yes, thank you, Chintan bhai. It was really a wonderful session for last 1.5 year. Half hour was really wonderful, very knowledgeable and informative session. Let me inform to all the participants that during the whole session, we have more than 500 participants, and it was a wonderful response to the seminar. Sir has delivered detailed sessions on this internal audit and considered various aspects of the internal audit. Sir, we are grateful and we are thankful on behalf of Ahmedabad branch. I present a hearty vote of thanks for presenting such a wonderful session, and we will look forward to you again in the future, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Tang Bhai.
Thank you, Parveen
Thank
ji.
you, sir.
Yeah. Now we are having with, we'll move towards the next session, and it's really a pride pleasure to have Kartik ji along with us. Kartik Radia, can you please switch on your camera, and Shezad, can you please have spotlight on Kartik ji and me along with Shwetan? Yeah.
Yes,
Great.
sir.
Okay, Kartik ji, welcome you.
Thank you.
Second session, third day, and the topic which you have given is amazing. I think this is something is a future which you are talking about. We all have been talking about, discussing about the internal audit, future of internal audit. But I think the topic which you are looking for, which you have covered, you're going to cover, is one of the most critical, which is a future. And the topic it says business case and practical aspects for integrating artificial intelligence into internal audit process and functions, and what, why, and how AI will work for internal auditing. We all have been listening about AI every day in, day out. And I think it will be really a pleasure to listen to next 1.5 hours from you. Before I hand over charge to you, Kartik ji, I request Shwetan to briefly introduce the faculty.
Thank you, Chintan bhai. First of all, it is my privilege to introduce such a huge faculty. I would say before reading his resume, I can say that. But considering the time frame, I will briefly introduce our today's faculty. Uh, Sir is a managing partner at Mazars India LLP. Mazars India LLP is a strong team of 25 plus partners and 400 plus team. He is based in Mumbai and having more than 20 years of experience in serving large and medium-sized clients in complete suite of advisories such as a technical name DAT, which means Digital Analytics Technology Enterprise Application, GRRC means Governance, Risk, Resilience and Compliance. Sir has delivered so many technical sessions and having experience of so many technical sites. So I need to cut short because if I'm going to read all these achievements, it will take minimum half an hour. So finally, sir is about the chartered accountant. Is also company secretary. He has done certified public accountant USA. Sir has done certified information system auditor USA, certified internal auditor USA, and a commerce graduate from Mumbai. So with a detailed but very effective introductions, I present before you learned faculty, C.A. Kartik sir.
Thank you so much, Shwetan, for having wonderful introduction. And Kartik ji, I think the topic and your profile, the both has made high expression for each one of us. And I'm sure that you're going to surpass everybody. So now with this brief word, I'm passing on the dais to you. Kartik ji, please. Please.
Thank you so much, Chintan bhai. Thank you so much for this. And I'm very sorry, I'm just making some arrangements to actually log in from one of the machines, and till the time it does, I've done it from the phone. So can anybody just upload the presentation that I had sent? It might take a little while for me to upload it because I've joined from the phone. So
Sure.
if that can be done, and meanwhile, I'm just trying to do it from the location that I'm present at.
Sure. Do it. Don't
So
worry.
sure. So going to the first very important point, before we even start off this meeting and the discussion and deliberation in detail, the full name of the topic is business case for integrating artificial intelligence in internal auditing, and that is what how about the artificial intelligence and how is it going to be really helpful for internal audit. So before even jumping quickly into this detailed deliberation, I would like to draw a couple of quick points, and maybe that will basically lay down the context of our discussion. We have seen so much of technology changing. Earlier days we had the batch processing systems where electronic data processing, EDP as we called it, that was the first starting point. We had file processing system, batch processing system, and then finally coming to electronic data processing. Enterprises and businesses, they communicated between themselves by way of EDP and electronic data by way of EDP and EDI, electronic data interchange. Later on the way, we also had a full-fledged enterprise resource planning as a business application coming in that tried to basically integrate all different business modules, all different kinds of business processes and databases and systems into one, which basically integrated all different functions into one enterprise resource planning. And that came in, and then most of the people or most of the companies, they started using that as a system. And later on, as we went along, we realized that okay, last 2 decades we have been using very nicely the enterprise resource planning ERP tools, but we have been now thinking as to how some of the most mundane, most repetitive activities, how can these activities be basically processed by the computers and can be done through automation or can be done through artificial intelligence, and can then human beings focus on something which is far more strategic, which is far more value adding, which is far more impactful. And that is a starting point of this conversation about artificial intelligence. So you have system of records in the form of an ERP system. It is called single source of truth or a systems of record. System of records means you have got everything at one place, which is by way of enterprise resource planning and integrated systems. And once we have got everything at one place, then can machines do some of the most mundane or repetitive tasks? And I can give you a couple of quick examples, and then we'll come to the examples around auditing. Let's say we are talking about procuring for a manufacturing company. We are talking about procuring, let's say, some of the raw materials, which are the core raw materials.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think if you can just be a little louder, or if audio can be much more clear, it will be easier.
Sure. Is it okay now? Is it okay?
Better than earlier. Yeah, better than earlier. And presentation is there, so you can also guide it.
Sure. Sure. So in case it is not audible or something, you can let me know. I will try to change my speakers. But I think in a few minutes I will be set up on my machine, so it'll be through just in a few minutes.
Sure.
So that is a starting. As I said, that's a starting point of the conversation, that you've got a systems of records, or rather a single source of truth in the form of most important business information, or rather every aspect of the business information lying in your systems. Can the artificial intelligence or machines or computers, can they handle some of the tasks that human beings have been handling? And I was giving an example of procurement function. Let's say for procuring some of the basic raw materials, what very simply a human being does is to go back into the systems, check the quantities. It doesn't go physically into the warehouse and check, but through the system, he checks it, he or she checks it, and then basically understands that there is a reorder point or a reorder level, and goes and orders an inventory for the manufacturing systems. And if that is the thing that a human being does and raise a purchase requisition and then a purchase order within an SAP or an ERP system, then can that task be also done by a machine if machines are taught or they are made deeply learned about the business processes? So the first point is, can that be done? And the second important point is that, while businesses, all different businesses, so, I want to give you some examples of some of the cases of artificial intelligence or digitalization that have been used across the board. Let's say in the space around which most of us are operating, whether it is income tax, let's say income tax or GST and some of the traditional practice areas, we uh, very much abundantly use digitalization. Earlier, just a decade back or a few years back, we used to be in the queue for filing our income tax returns and GST returns and different kinds of manual challans and so on. But now, the environment that we are operating in, we are seeing that the entire income tax filing has gone automated, and for most of the part of the SSCs. Secondly, you look at Companies Act, auditing, for example. Most of the audit filings, most of the ROC filings, most of these filings have gone digital. And this is the context of the environment that we are talking about. GST, for example, we've got ASP, GSP, and different kinds of GSTR filings that are happening, through some of the portals. The question is that while this kind of environment that we are operating in is already operating at a very highly digitalized, in a very highly digitalized environment. In auditing, the fundamental question comes is, have we as businesses progressed, as environment around us has progressed so much in auditing, whether it is internal auditing or statutory auditing, have we been able to create any kind of automated platforms or any kind of intelligent platforms which are basically automated and digitalized in a way that we are seeing in some of our environments? Or is our auditing still to a very large extent is by following our age-old methodology or our age-old processes of going back and learning at the client's place, understanding the SOPs, business processes, and doing some of the very, very basic things like discussions with the management and trying to understand the business processes and so on. So is there some kind of technology or an intelligence that we as auditors are using it? My question is to generally to this group here, that while business has gone into so much of technology revolution, we've got different models, like Zomato is one recent one, but there are many of these kind of models that have come up. Many of these models, that are there, have we been able to create a technology around auditing? I think that's a core question, that is there. Are we using sufficiently the artificial intelligence as a technology, or at least some basic automation in the auditing is the very basic? And do we at this point of time really need something like an artificial intelligence or something like an automated tools and platforms for doing audit? And that's a question that I have to put it first before we actually get into the details of the topic. So Chintan, I'm just shifting into the machine now.
Sure.
So that is the first very point. Just one second.
Sorry, was I audible? I think I was not audible. So can I be heard
now it's okay. Now perfect audio.
Okay. So Chintan, if you can come back to that presentation, I think it'll be good because
Can you please run presentation from your PC? It will be easier for you to just do it.
Okay, one sec. I think I might need some time for that. If you can share it, I think it'll be great, Chintan.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and I would like to, so while that is a question that we started with, that is there some kind of a basic platform or even some kind of automated tools that we have been able to create for auditing, whether statutory or internal auditing? Have you been able to create something like that? And my answer to that is, again, it's not just an Indian phenomena, but, globally, I would say, in a very blunt manner, that auditing as a profession generally has not been able to keep pace with what the technology developments have been around. So, if you look at businesses have been able to create a lot more customer experience, digital existence. You look at today, all the traditional business formats, whether restaurant, hospitality, entertainment, all these different models they have been able to leverage, and those that have been able to adopt the technology and intelligence and digital platforms, they have been able to create the mark, and all of us know this. It doesn't need any further explanation on that. But auditing as a profession generally needs a lot more sophistication, a lot more automation, a lot more digitalization, and therefore the term deliberation on artificial intelligence and internal audit comes about. So definitely, therefore, the key question is, why are we deliberating? And that's the answer, that we are deliberating because I think it's a high time that internal auditing and statutory auditing adopts artificial intelligence and some kind of automation, some kind of digitalization in our basic interactions with the auditees and with various stakeholders. So I now come to the technology landscape of artificial intelligence. So what is this artificial intelligence all about? I think it's a very widely used term. Most of us use this day in and day out. What is this exactly about? Is it the same as, because a lot of times many of these terms are used interchangeably. Is it the same as RPA? Is it the same as, let's say, machine learning? Is it the same as, let's say, blockchain? Are all of these same? Or there is some amount of difference in some of these artificial intelligence systems. So I would like to just progressively explain this term of artificial intelligence. Basically, it is nothing but the simulation of human intelligence that is applied by machines. So human intelligence that is simulated by machines is the term artificial intelligence. So the tasks that human beings carry out, the tasks that human beings carry out, and those which are repetitive, can we involve machines to do it? And that is what is artificial intelligence. Sometimes there is a very solid case for artificial intelligence, and very powerful case comes for artificial intelligence in the form that, traditionally, if we look at the way the human mind is structured and the way the human mind has evolved, we can only study up to 2 X and Y axis, or maybe X, Y, and Z axis. I don't think the linear programming or any other format like a simultaneous equations or various other formats we've been able to study able to study more than 3 variables at a given point of time. And that is where a very large amount of limitation exists when we use our traditional format of examination and relationship driving. So X, Y, and Z axis, there is a very solid, powerful case for artificial intelligence where there are more than 15, 20, or even at times more than hundreds of variables. More than hundreds of variables that actually define a problem. And the solution, if at all we have to find a solution, then all interplay of all these variables have to be understood. And that is only possible to do it through machines. So, so what is a progressive format of artificial intelligence? Starting with the data first, and it's always the data first. So anything that you want to become intelligent about, it has to be about the data first and learning and understanding. And analyzing the data in detail first. So that's where we say that what is the advanced analytics or what is the data analytics, and that's the first starting point. And I would like to just give you an example of how in auditing we use data analytics or machine learning or the advanced analytics, is to say that when we go for an audit at our client's place, do we basically know the data patterns of the area that we are doing an audit of? So let's say a procurement function, or let's say a finance function. Do we have all the database of all the data elements that has got applied in a period? Is that being studied by us? Has it got analyzed by us before even hitting the ground? So that's how the data analytics get applied as a data first in an internal auditing scenario. The second is natural language processing. So most of us, for example, are getting automated emails, automated SMSs when we draw, let's say, certain amount from our ATM, or let's say when we apply for an electronic ticket for a flight. We usually get a standard automated email. Even, for example, we get automated email responses from income tax department, from ROC, from various other authorities, and that's where there are standard language processors that basically study, and they create an automated response to a particular type of a query, and that is called natural language processing. So there is a means of communication, either SMS, emails, WhatsApp, and that can be naturally processed. They are the standard types of queries that can give you the standard types of response through a natural language processing. The third very important element, and where natural language processing stops, is RPA, robotic process automation. Very, very widely spoken about, very widely discussed subject in the current times. And this is where the first, I would say in the real sense, the artificial intelligence kicks off. Of course, it's data first, and natural language processing are also part of the artificial landscape progressive journey. But robotic process automation is the first place where there is certain kind of intelligence that is applied in a business process scenario, and that is where a robot basically comes and does a human job. So, for example, if you have a systems of record or an SAP ERP system, and you are making a human being to put accounting entries or create business transactions like a purchase requisition or a sales order or some of these similar transactions, that can very well be done by a robot. And a robot needs to be simply told what it needs to do based on certain predefined parameters and criteria, what it needs to do, and it will simply go out and execute the tasks that the robot is asked to do. And very typically it is called, we used to say something like a monkey say and monkey do. So this will exactly follow that format. It is not going to follow any advanced form of intelligence other than what is fed in for a business process. And many of these business processes are so much, are so much standard and stereotyped, are so much standardized that RPA can do a very good job in terms of processing a business transaction. Coming to a conversational artificial intelligence, that's a slightly next level compared to an RPA, and that is where basically there is a certain interaction with a human being in the form of experience. Let's say, for example, a phone call, and let's say you call a bank and you start talking to a machine, and the machine helps you to either recognize your voice and guides you to select a particular option. Not the very typical option of a standard telephone, a telecall, but it is a proper conversational artificial intelligence, in the sense that the machines interact with human beings as if you feel as if on the other side there is a human being who is interacting, and he or she is guiding us through this process. But actually it is not a human being, it is a machine on the other side who is helping us to guide us and to take us through certain or solve certain problem or certain query that is being posed. It also exists in the form of chatbots. And at times chatbots and conversation can go together. So for example, typically most of the website, like you look at bank, a bank website or an insurance company website, when you have a certain query on bank balance or an insurance claim or anything, there is a chatbot, and you start interacting with the chatbot. Once you start interacting with the chatbot, it has authenticated you that you're the right person. And after that authentication, it starts giving you what you need. And there's an interplay between a conversation on a phone call and a chatbot. And together there is an intelligence that works, and that takes you to a very right option. So for example, a very routine example could be, let's say, a bank balance that you want to check. Instead of using an SMS that is sent to a standard number, you can very well interact. You can very well interact through a chatbot or through a conversational artificial intelligence, not just bank balance, but what is my bank balance going to be after next 1 month, after I pay my electricity bills, after I pay my insurance, after I pay all different kinds of expenses. This conversational artificial intelligence can drop the model right in front of you and can construct a model and can give you what if scenarios. And it interacts very well with human beings, and give you that experience. In the auditing world, also conversational artificial intelligence can be very well used to interact with the process owners and to interact with various stakeholders. So various business functions. So it's not just a customer facing experience that can get created to artificial intelligence, conversational artificial intelligence, but it is also the interdepartmental processes. So if I have to interact with the auditee, I can very well make a use of conversational artificial intelligence to talk to the process owners in a very standardized way and get my processes done. Similarly, let's say an HR department. While an HR department would have a payroll and a pay slip and different things as a part of the routine processes, but any employee in the company can actually get into a conversational artificial intelligence and can understand from a human capital function or a payroll executive, which is again existing in the form of a machine, that for example, what is going to be my tax declaration, by which date do I have to submit. You can just pose a question instead of any query or getting into and logging into some various screens that can give this kind of information. You can just pose a question, and it is then this tool, conversational artificial intelligence, that will get into the right kind of a database or right kind of a table within the database and can fetch you that information and give you that experience. So very well can be used in an internal audit function very nicely, where different auditors within an internal audit department can also. So for example, one application is, let's say a plant leadership or a manufacturing leadership of a company has incurred a major expansion, quality improvement expansion project, and they want to find out after the capex and pre-capex. This is one variable, but along with that, various other variables. Let's say when a team led by Mr. X was involved in the production, and a team led by Mr. Y was involved in the production, how has the wastage behaved? How has the input-output ratio behaved? And that can be in a very live manner. If you ask an internal auditor to construct this as per this model, an internal auditor can take a few days, at least 3 or 4 or 5 days. Whereas a conversational artificial intelligence, if you just feed with that intelligence, it will go out and fetch all internal audit reports, and it will construct as per the variable and as per the model that we need that information. So for example, with the leadership of Mr. X, pre and post the capital expenditure, how is the wastage or how is the input-output ratio behaved? And likewise, under Mr. Y, who is, let's say, in charge of some other plant, how is the wastage behaved pre and post capital expenditure? So this is, in short, conversational artificial intelligence. Like that, we have an expert systems on things like IoT, drones. I would also classify blockchain as a part of these expert systems. All of these are very, very expert systems that are supposed to do some specific tasks, specific decisions, and some specific processes and activities. So let's say, for example, drones. Drones typically help to replace human beings and do out activities. And I have got some examples, certain case studies to be dealt with as we go a little bit more into details, that how a drone can carry out certain auditing processes of physical verification, so that it can go through remote control mechanisms, and through artificial intelligence it can go and record, it can measure, and it can give you very, very accurate results. So for example, let's say there is a manufacturing plant for a metal and mining company, and let's say there is a heap of a raw material that is put inside the plant in one of the storage locations, and it is stored in a cone mechanism. Most of the heaps are stored in the cone mechanism. So earlier, human beings had to basically carry out certain assaying or assessing process, where they used to measure different sites, through some physical measurements, and it used to take hours and hours. Today, you deploy a drone, it will go out and do the exact measurements in an exact manner, and will come back and tell you that this is the size and the volume of the cone. And most often than not, you will not fail, or it will be most accurate kind of a measurement. Likewise, IoT. IoT, is where every device is going to talk to internet, and with the advent of 5G, it is IoT, which is going to enable each and every device, and there'll be billions and billions of devices, including your home air conditioners, including your door, and including your lighting and all of the different mechanisms that will be docking through a device to a human beings, and is going to help you to create some expert experience and some expert processing. So that is expert systems. The last piece is virtual experience. Some more will evolve as we go along. In the future, this is how the current mechanism and the landscape is. But coming to virtual experience, and let me give an example of a virtual experience. Basically, today we are interacting on this virtual platform of a Zoom. Imagine that we are not here in a classroom or in an auditorium or in one place. But if we were to replicate this experience in the form of a virtuality, basically sitting hundreds of kilometers away or thousands of kilometers away, if I have a virtual device, we will have an experience of much better than the actual reality, and that is virtual reality. So that is the kind of experience of, let's say, virtual meetings, but in a VR kind of a scenario. And there are various other examples in virtual reality. Most important is if you happen to order something on some of the e-commerce websites, like Amazon, or some of the furniture or color paintings, if you have to order and you want to see how does your house look like with those paintings. So you give your pictures and photographs of your house, and how does your house look like? How does your drawing room look like? If you have got a certain type of a furniture and a certain kind of a paint, it is that virtual reality or an augmented reality that can actually help you to understand that. And that is one example, in the form of virtual reality. So all of these are the part of artificial intelligence. It's progressively an artificial intelligence landscape, one step after the other. And if we are to look at an auditing example, a very blunt belief, at least that I carry, and I'm sure most of you will agree, I think it's a high time that we at least pick up the first two or first three of the phases within artificial intelligence. So, the data first, or the natural language processing and RPA, I think these three are the very, very core basics that need to be applied by an internal audit, at least, even if you don't go to expert systems or a conversational AI or a virtual reality, at least these first three are the most important ones. Can we go to the next slide, please? So coming to an AI for an internal auditing at an abstract level, what does it mean? At a conceptual level, what does it mean? So, just going into little basics of an internal auditing. What is an internal auditing? So internal auditing is an independent, objective assurance and consulting activity that is designed to add value and improve organizational operations. If this is what is the core of an internal audit, it is actually two things that we are doing in internal audit. One is it is giving an assurance, a very objective assurance as to whether things are going right. And the second is there is also consulting activity. So we are also consulting the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? It is management, senior management, the board, the audit committee, and also statutory auditors. I would call even statutory auditors as one of the stakeholders because they depend to a certain extent, or in some cases even a large extent, on the internal audit function. So an objective assurance and a consulting activity. Now, if at all we have to really play a role of an assurance and consulting, then we need to really understand how business is moving and keeping pace with the technological advancements. And if the role of an internal audit at an assurance level for an assurance function, and consulting and assurance, but let's say even for an assurance function, is to look at least things like internal controls and continuous monitoring, risk management and compliance, statutory compliance reviews, system process and people reviews. If that is what you need to do, even in your assurance function, then the entire life cycle of an internal audit, starting from data. I always keep saying data first, right? So whatever you do, whether audit or anything else, it is always data first. So starting from the data, data cleansing, reading, sampling, validation, exception reporting, communication, report creation, presentation, library of all the internal audit reports in a digitalized format, benchmarking with some of the external examples, and continuous improvement. Entire life cycle of an internal audit can be automated, or can be at a very abstract level can be automated, and there can be a good amount of artificial intelligence induction into each of these processes within the life cycle of an internal audit. And each of these phases, there is enough case for making sure that we use the time most efficiently, and we are able to get even a report well constructed for some of the very basic, elementary and standard processes made up by machines, made up by an artificial intelligence format. So just to give you an example, what do we do as human beings when we have to do, let's say, data download? Typically, we ask for an access and we go into SAP and try to generate a report, like a Z report, or like any other database or data table. Try to get that access and try to generate a report. And that is the data extraction, the first phase. That can very well be programmed by a machine. A machine or an RPA tool can easily go into the ERP system and can extract whatever information that we need in a pre-programmed manner at a predefined time from the system. So that can be done by machine. Now, whatever analysis that we need to perform on the data that is extracted, whatever that we do can be done through a RPA. So, for example, whatever checks that we need to carry out, that can be done. If you have to make a report, that report can very well be made by an RPA tool by getting into the past library of how a similar report was made up in the past, and a certain refinement. A report language can also be, with of course the change of numbers and the change of specifics, the exact report can also be written by an RPA tool. And then when it comes to rating and grading of the internal audit finding, that can also be done using the implications and using certain criteria that is pre-fed in. That can also be done by a tool. So all of this, in this entire life cycle, it is artificial intelligence that can be very well applied in the entire spectrum of internal audit life cycle. If your role is to do an assurance, and if your role is to certainly add a value, then AI can be adopted all pervasively within an internal audit life cycle to really really perform the job adequately and efficiently, and also to create that kind of a experience with the stakeholders. And in the entire format, it is artificial intelligence that can be very well integrated and can be used. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the title of the presentation, which we said is business case for AI. So what is a real business case for an AI? And there are various reasons why AI should be actually used for internal auditing. And the first one is, of course, continuous innovation, continuous learning, adoption, and continuous experience feeding, data feeding, and being up to date. If we as human beings carry out as we do it always, or as we've done it in the past, then it will be a complete manual exercise, and we'll keep updating the Excel sheets after Excel sheets. But if we were to actually adopt this, then there will be a continuous innovation, continuous repository that gets built up. There's a learning and an experience that is actually fed, that is automatically fed into the machines. Like, for example, I can also give you an example where an internal auditor who is dealing with an audit, he let's say starting from requesting for a data from the process owner, that goes through the system, and the way the auditee or the process owner is going to respond, the time that he's going to take, the response that he's going to give, if I were to qualitatively rate it in using certain criteria, then basically it can be best. And because a human being, of course, cannot manually do a lot of this tracing and recording, but machines can very well do it. And using that, it can rate the response of the auditee, saying that to what extent the auditee is satisfied, to what extent the auditee is fed up, or to what extent the auditee is involved and engaged into the internal auditing. So that is continuous innovation and continuous learning. That can be fed in as a part of artificial intelligence, and only artificial intelligence can do it. 24/7 into 366 days. I call it 366 because machines, they work all around the year, all around the clock. And therefore it is, all 24/7, 366. So most of the robots and most of the AI tools, we have to give them, certain schedules as per which we have to tell them what they have to do at what time. And those have to be pre-scheduled and pre-programmed as a part within the system to make sure that they are fully functional and they are fully utilized. Accuracy, there's no doubt that you get best of the accuracy when you have machines to deal with, because there's a certain amount of speed, and there is a certain amount of a check and a balance by the machines, and therefore there is an enhanced accuracy that we can expect using artificial intelligence. Scalability, I don't think this also needs any explanation. As I said, there are only 3 dimensions or 2 or 3 dimensions that a human being can really look at. If you have to really scale up into a huge set of data repository where you have to study it from, it is only a scalable model, and only an AI can help you to do that kind of a scalability, for an internal audit. So if you have to really achieve the scalability, it is artificial intelligence. Complements and transforms human intelligence. And there's no doubt, because I already said this, that human mind has a limitation. It can very accurately understand, comprehend, and can provide results in a linear programming format up to 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions at the most. I don't think we have learned in our curriculum more than 3 dimensions. We have not learned simultaneous equations more than X, Y, and Z. We have not learned that. Maybe over times we can learn a little bit more, but it can never be 15 dimensions or hundreds of dimensions, which only a machine can complement. And it is not just complementing the technical capabilities, it is also complementing and enhancing the experience. And that brings us to the next point, that transcending the human limitations and boundaries to a very different next level and adding a very synergistic value. Now, I want to connect this point to one of the points in the myths and challenges. And a lot of times people come up with saying, why do you have to use machines? It will take away human jobs. Is that a correct argument? Or is it a correct way of really looking at it? So we have to only go back to the empirical evidences. We don't have, none of us know the future, how the future is going to look like beyond a certain time. But definitely there are empirical evidences of the past. So today, for example, imagine an autopilot, okay? An autopilot who is driving the plane, right? And we have got, we know that, most of the planes, they fly autopilot. Does it mean that they have replaced pilots? Have the planes replaced the pilots? The answer is no. And in a flight there are always co-pilots. Has it even replaced a co-pilot? The answer is no. Earlier when the entire Indian banking industry went through an automation and computerization, we used to use a word called computerization. So when this computerization happened starting 90s, has it replaced human jobs? People used to worry. Most of the people in the public sector banks, they went for strikes. They said, we don't want computers because it will take away human jobs. Has that happened like that? The reality is exactly opposite, because the more scalable that the machines have enabled us, the more human boundaries have got transcended. Because imagine making a balance sheet for a company like Reliance, for a company like Amazon. Is it ever possible without machines? Is it currently, is it possible to create so many different P&Ls, so many entries, and coming with a balance sheet of Amazon? Is it possible to do it without machines? The answer is clearly no. So it is only a synergistic value addition that happens using machines. It is never replacing human beings. It is never going to be, because always it is seen, when computerization in banks happened, when the SAP system came in, when the most of the bookkeepers lost their jobs. It is not that they lost the jobs completely. People have actually upgraded themselves by learning SAP and some of these systems. And when they learned it, they got further advanced. And machines and humans together, they created an experience. That is far more scalable, and it is far more possible than what it used to be earlier. So that is synergistic value addition. Coming to myths and challenges, and why are we discussing this? We are discussing this because most of the limitations, they come in the form of a mindset. Many times we believe that machines are useless because we just believe it. There's no empirical reality to it, but we just tend to believe it. So there are some myths, there are some challenges, but a large part of this actually comes from the mindset that it comes from the mindset of not wanting to adopt to a change that is coming. But today, frankly speaking, the question is, do we even have that option of saying that, okay, fine, this is a technology, I don't want to learn it, I don't want to do it. Today, everything virtually happens on your mobile phone. Can you even go back and say, no, I don't want to do this, and this is not the way I want to do it? Can we go back and say, no, we want to use an analog phone, or we want to only use a landline phone? I don't want to use a mobile phone, which can give so many possibilities. So that's not an answer. It's a question of mindset, and it's only the question of mindset that is going to that has to be overcome, and that has to be transcended to be able to really adopt the artificial intelligence and some of the other technology platforms. So myths and challenges. Question number one, integration of technologies. Is it a myth or is it a challenge? Is it a myth or is it a challenge? It is actually a challenge, because you've got, imagine when a SAP system came in, there were not many options. There were hardly 2 or 3 couple of options. And people by and large adopted, let's say, SAP as one of the standard ERP systems. Today, the things are very different. Today, for any piece of emerging technologies, there are many, 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 many options. Many of these technologies are standalone. Some of the technologies that talk to devices, some of the technologies they talk to databases, some of the technologies they talk to environments. And how do we actually integrate all these different technologies? Because each of these technologies have been created by different kinds of experts for different kinds of environments. You are, as a business, using all these different technologies. How do we integrate these technologies? That's the real challenge. How do we integrate? So the question then is, okay, we had an ERP system like an SAP. Can we have one single platform that will integrate everything? So can we have every kind of a digital thing or an artificial intelligence thing? Can we have it as a part of a single ERP or a single system like an SAP system? It used to be earlier like an ERP was MyBAP, everything was ERP within ERP. But can it be now possible? Because you've got created so many layers, like a chatbot, like a like a telephony system, like a virtual reality. All of this is in and over and above and around, sitting around your core systems. So can there ever be a single platform? The answer is no. And therefore you have to only talk about integration of technologies. Let me tell you, friends, integration of technologies is going to be a concern area for not now, but at least for more than a decade to come. How are we going to integrate these different technologies? And it's not just transfer of data, right? Earlier we used to say, okay, there's a data interchange or transfer of data. That is integration. And no, integration of technologies is how these technologies are going to talk, interact, and create that kind of an experience. So that is going to be a very important challenge that is going to be there with artificial intelligence, because each of these are standalone different technologies, and always people talk about integration, and that's what we are talking about. Limited skill sets and know-how, very important issue again. Is it a myth or is it a challenge? In my view, it is a challenge. Why is it a challenge? So India as a country today houses nearly 30 to 35% of the global technology experts. You take any field, you take IT services, you take our own field, accounting, accounting and auditing, and look at the larger firms, right? Most of these larger firms, there are thousands and thousands of people sitting in India in a center of excellence or shared services in India doing global work. So in a country like India, where we are supporting most of the technology companies, nearly 30% of their staff, whether technology or an accounting firm, 30% of their staff operating out of India, 30, 40, global staff, not Indian staff, just 30 to 40% of the global staff operating out of India for various English speaking countries and even non-English speaking countries. I think India has got a huge abundance of skill sets, but it is still limited. And that's where we see most of the people who know and learn technologies, they're in very scarce supply. That's a challenge. It's very expensive. You see people who know RPA, people who know some of these technologies on artificial intelligence or even data analytics, they tend to get very easy offers and they run off with 40-50% salary break and the next job. So that's a core challenge that we are facing. It is a challenge. It's going to be a challenge because there's only the requirement or the demand is huge. The supply is only the number of people who have learned this. So it's going to take a little while to solve it. But that's limited skill sets and know-how. Many countries outside India, there's a real challenge, because to be able to make machines learn, you need human beings to make the machines learn, because machines are not naturally intelligent. They have to be made artificially intelligent. To make them artificially intelligent, it is necessary that human beings make them deeply learn. So that's going to be a challenge for at least, I would say at least a decade or so, at least even more, but that's going to be a core challenge. Outpace human intelligence. So it's going to replace human jobs. It's going to outpace human intelligence. This to me is just a myth, is not a challenge, is no connection to reality. Because as I said, it's only going to complement and transcend human limitations, is going to support human intelligence. It's not going to outpace. Only humans together with machines. And it's never going to happen that machines are going to completely replace humans. It's always human beings are going to be a step forward. Once we've created these machines, we've given the jobs and mundane activities to machines, we are going to look at next important areas which are of high impact, model building, and real value adding in the future. So outpace human intelligence and replace human jobs, that's not going to happen. It is only going to support, it's not going to replace. It is expensive. Is that a myth or is a challenge? Many may want to believe it's a challenge, that is very expensive. I may agree to a certain extent, but in the end, in a total sum game, if you talk about making machines to be used, for replacing some of the basic mundane activities through artificial intelligence, right? It is going to be a cost-effective proposition. It is not going to be expensive. Our experience, my personal experience, having implemented this for some of the large companies in pharmaceutical, in manufacturing space, in the financial services industry, in insurance industry, and many other industries, clearly tells me, at least I get a perspective of two most important key result areas. 60 to 70% of our jobs can be automated. 60 to 70%, clearly all activities that we are doing, 60, 70%, all of us also. We're not every day doing some real strategic stuff, right? So 60 to 70% of the activities can be automated and at 30% of the cost. This is how the real equation looks like. So it is not expensive. And even if you talk about the capex for implementing it, the capital expenditure for implementing it, even add the capex, the first year cost, including the capex cost, will not exceed 70% of the cost that we were incurring using human beings. So let's say you're spending 100 rupees through the artificial intelligence in the first very year, you will only spend 70 rupees. And that's my experience, of implementing some of these for some of the large scale projects. And that is very practical. So then what is the real issue? The real issue is we are using human beings to basically do some of the mundane activities. That is not what our job is. In fact, job as human beings is to look at real strategic stuff or value-adding stuff or high impact stuff which machines can't handle, right? So that machines cannot handle. So, but are we having enough time? We don't have enough time because all of us are busy in mundane activities. So the answer is it's not expensive. It may look to be, some of the tools may look to be expensive. Like I want to give you an example. If you go back to a conversational artificial intelligence, the thing that I mentioned, a conversational artificial intelligence and an RPA tool, one RPA robot can actually very easily replace, 3 human beings. And how much an RPA tool cost? Maybe an end-to-end implementation can cost you some 12, 13 lakhs, including the software license. In the year one, it can replace human cost of at least 35 lakhs. That's a very typical experience. It can be even more, but a very typical experience says that, okay, by incurring 12, 13 lakhs, you can actually, replace a human cost of, 35, 36 lakhs. This is a practical experience. Same is the case with conversational artificial intelligence. In conversational artificial intelligence, if you were to apply, let's say you keep a payroll, 2 or 3 payroll executives who will keep answering thousands of employees, they have questions and they will reach out on a phone call and they will reach out, to the payroll executive asking about, the payroll aspects. And you just have one conversational RPA bot, just one CI bot in a human resource department that can easily replace at least 4 or 5, payroll executives. And then what are we making these guys to do? Payroll executives, they're simply they're fed up actually, constantly answering questions. And each of these executives, do you think they answer in a standardized way? When they're asked a question on any payroll activity, do they answer in a standardized way? Everybody answers it differently. Imagine in an auditing world, 5 internal auditors, they're going on an audit field. They are doing the same things in a very different manner. Everyone is doing as per his or her own understanding. There's no standardization. So that is the point on expensive, and it's a real myth, but it has no connection to reality. Come to the next point, lack of human touch. Many people blame also technology, saying that, look, guys, this is artificial intelligence, but it's not really intelligent. There's no human touch. I don't feel like I'm interacting with a human being. He's not able to understand my emotions. And that also is a mere myth, because imagine, as I told you, an example of payroll executive or a customer service executive. Let's say a customer service executive, answering, and there are so many different customer executives, right? A payroll, a call center, for example, for a bank or an insurance company. They all tend to behave differently. They all tend to answer differently as per their understanding. There are millions and millions of rupees that we are spending in training them to respond in a particular way. And even then there is a huge attrition. There's a huge attrition of people leaving, and with your people going, all your training and all your intelligence that is developed goes away. So therefore the blame of lack of human touch is again, because once the experience is built into the machines, together human beings and machines. So there is a point where a human being takes over from a machine, an unsolved job, and the machine hands it over to a human being. Let's say a query that has come in, and automatically there is a transmission. There is a taking over, and it's a brilliant experience. It creates a brilliant experience. There is no lack of human touch. In fact, a machine combined with a human being can actually provide the best possible answer and can give best possible results and outcomes. So this is also a myth, lack of human touch. And the last point is lack of economic scale. That is again a myth, because scalability added to economics basically only creates an economic scale. And if you have to really adopt, what is Amazon today, for example? Amazon is nothing but a technology applied to a retail model and at a particular scale. And if you have to talk about that scale, there cannot be a lack of a scale if you adopt technology. If you adopt technology, it is only going to enable an economic scale. So that is also a myth. So there are two myths here out of 7 points. The first two are challenges. Sorry, there are only two challenges. The first two, integration of technologies and limited skill sets. They are the core challenges. Rest, everything else is a myth, and which needs to be kept in mind by all of us also as internal auditors. Can we quickly jump into the next slide, please? So I've given some basic 4 examples here as to how an AI can be applied in an internal auditing. These are live cases. We have actually applied this in these given scenarios, and based on which we are suggesting this in this. There are many other cases, but these are some basic examples. So starting with, let's say, data intelligence, and this doesn't need a lot of explanation, but it says that, okay, there is an enterprise data warehouse, right? A repository. And most companies now today have a data warehouse. And what is this data warehouse all about? The data warehouse, so for example, when we had a shortage, so ERP will give you the status as of today. But if you have to create a complete data repository of what happened when, who did it, what were the results, and the complete history at different points of time, that is through a data warehouse. And what we are suggesting here is that for internal audit also there should be a data warehouse. We should have all the data at all different points of time fed in. All our internal audit reports should be there in the form of data warehouse. And there could be a separate cut or a separate vertical or a separate part within the enterprise data warehouse to be called as an internal audit data warehouse, which should be existing. And then basically that will only help us to put all the data in. That will help us to basically build up some sensitivity analysis, predictability, forecasting, and cause and effect, complete cause and effect. So for example, in a retail industry, let's say, for example, there in a let's say Corona pandemic kind of a situation where we had all different kinds of zones, manufacturing facilities were under some zones, red zones or green zones, and customers were in different zones. And how, let's say, if you're a company like, let's say, Mahindra and Mahindra, who used to manufacture automobiles. Now, manufacturing automobiles, there was no demand for, let's say, there was no demand for automobiles in a pandemic. I mean, I'm talking about March, April, May, June 2020. But there was a need for farming, right? And therefore, a company like Mahindra and Mahindra, I'm just giving an example. So let's say the tractors were very much in demand. The agriculture was considered to be an essential commodity because we had the whole country to feed, right? The farmers had to work, the tractors had to work. So there is a problem. How do we make sure that the resources are moved into a tractor division from an automobile or a consumer automobile division? How do we move it? And which are the locations where we can move it, because all of them are in different zones. Now, how do we solve this problem? That problem can be solved through some real advanced analytics by simulation of inventories, because that kind of a problem we have not seen so far. I don't think history has shown us this kind of a problem in last 100 years or last even 10, 15 years of our working experience. And that is, through the data intelligence and modeling, that problem can be solved. I can give you another example of fraud prediction and risk prediction and fraud modeling. So if your employee is rated so and so, if he has studied so and so, if he has certain number of experience so and so, if he is coming from so and so background, then there is so much percentage of chance that there is a fraud that is possible. And those are the kind of models we are talking about using data, right? So NPA, for example, in a banking industry. So what is the possibility of a fraud happening in one of the companies? Let's say it's a chemical. Let's say it's a chemical industry. Most of the chemicals are bought in a local market, a local mandi market, for example. So depending on the industry, depending on the people, depending on the culture of the company, depending upon the state of governance, depending upon the state of internal audit, you can put all of this into a context and can predict a fraud. What is the chance of the fraud? And then you can basically build your internal auditing around this model of the fraud that we just discussed, and can actually focus on specific instances. Is it a people-related model? In the model, you will find out, is it a people-related issue? Is it an education-related issue? Is it a culture-related issue? Is it a board governance issue? Or is it a senior management issue? Or is it an environmental issue? So all of this, is possible through data modeling and data intelligence. RPA, I've already explained. The most important point here is, to standardize, re-engineer, and make sure that the processes are automated, and give away all the repetitive, mundane jobs to robots, so that creative human energies can be used for strategic and high-impact decision-making and intuitive areas where machines can't work, because machines don't know how to apply intuition. Integrated business processes and reflection of common organizational theme. Now, I want to give you one perspective here, and I think it's very easily relatable. A human resource function is headed by a HR head, of a finance function is headed by a CFO. Both of them, 4 years before, they came and joined this company, and last 4 years they've been working together. Now, the CFO basically believes in keeping all the approvals to himself in a very centralized way. HR head believes to decentralize it, saying that my guys, let me empower them and let them take all the decisions and let not anything come to me. And these are people and personality related issues, and you cannot avoid it. Even in some of the largest organizations, you can't avoid it, because that's how processes cannot be set up without keeping human beings into mind. And if an individual with a particular background comes and says, I want this, then the processes have to be that way. But look at it from an organizational perspective. Is it a right approach to say, is it really a right approach to say that you will have different departments dealing with the things differently? And is there a common organizational theme, or a common approach, or a reflection of a common organizational objective and a theme all across? Is there, I mean, whatever is there is a common theme, because every organization comes with a belief system, comes with a basic proposition. Is that reflected in the business processes? And through RPA, it gives us an opportunity to build up one common theme. So if HR function believes in full decentralization, and finance function believes in full centralization, keeping everything to the top, somewhere the RPA will come and say, can we just rationalize it, and can we bring to a common plane, at least somewhere close, and let there be a common organizational theme all across? And that is called integrated business process. Remember that functions are not silos. Ultimately, they are part of the organization. And if they're part of the organization, they have to be bound by a common theme and to operate in an integrated manner. And that can only happen through RPA. It also enables us to basically build resilience, to build process objectivity, to build up a quality management system, and to build up a capability maturity model. So that is RPA. Coming to physical verification of fixed assets and inventories, and my at least very simple point here, or a case here, is when it involves taking some of the most complex dip measurements or at some of the most odd places and complex and difficult places, at least save human beings or excuse human beings from at least doing that. Don't make human beings to actually travel overnight, or take a long flight and do just a physical verification. Very well, a drone can actually help you if you program it well, and can do a very independent kind of a surveying, dip measurements, and real-time review, which human beings cannot do. And it gives at least there's a nice experience for human beings that they don't have to do at least physical verification. I mean, I remember at least more than 17, 18 years back, every month end, first and second, 31st first, or 31st of first, we used to go for physical verification, for some manufacturing companies. And it was hell lot of a difficult experience, because whether it is a Sunday, whether it is a public holiday, we have to be there. It's the other thing that we can take a compensatory off, but that's not a very good experience. So at least use some of these technologies. They are very much a cost-effective proposition also. Conversational artificial intelligence, I already gave an example of a chatbot. I also gave an example of a pre-capex, post-capex, different plans, different people, how an immediate modeling of your reports can be done, and how a quick study can be carried out and an immediate report can be furnished using conversational artificial intelligence. So, and the last slide that I have is on building a very practical AI roadmap, and a capability maturity, not a business process maturity, but a AI artificial intelligence roadmap and a capability maturity, starting with, I always say, data first. Transform your data, bring your data together, have a proper warehouse, structure your data well, so that you can build up modeling and start some kind of analysis. So that is data transformation. Second is process transformation using an RPA, transform your processes. Third is integrated business functions. As I told you, that process, the function is not silo, it is a part of larger organization. Integrate, let there be a common organizational theme between an HR, between a finance function. Let there be an integrated business, that let there be integration between different functions. Let there be, step 4 is, let there be integrated technologies. Whatever technologies, different platforms you're using, let it be integrated, bring it into a common integrated platform. And the last is create an AI center of excellence. Very, very practical step. Get the champions from business and get the champions from core technologies. We used to call it earlier as a steering committee. Steering committee, here we are calling it as center of excellence. Let this be a team of people from different functions, all different functions. Let there be leadership in there, and let there be also technology expertise, and they will basically examine each and every emerging technology and can suggest us, and can examine it and can help us also integrate. But this is very much essential, because otherwise you'll never be able to integrate technologies. All technologies will be standalone, siloed technologies. Let there be a common center of excellence, and let this center of excellence drive all the technology, artificial intelligence projects. And IA, I say that IA should be a very important part of this AI center of excellence as a business process, internal controls, and a governance champion. It is a case for an internal audit to be a part of AI center of excellence, because that's where they will know what is happening in the company. Sitting as a part of this center of excellence, they will know what projects to audit, what is to be achieved out of those projects, what are the audit areas that need to be looked at, what is the risk, and what are the issues basically. So that's all from my side as far as an artificial intelligence integration within an audit function is concerned. I would be glad to answer some questions that are there. Happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Kartik. I think the topic itself was so much heavy and it's a very new one for everyone to understand. But you will try to really touch upon very, very important facets of the artificial intelligence. And I'm sure that this will really help us to really look for these things. It's not easy for us to really do it at these junctures. But I think, see, one question from my side, Kartik, to you. Which are the any ready-made tools available of AI tools available for using in internal audit? Is there any AI tools I can easily use? Because for a startup like us, how can we really use it?
So that's a very good question, and there are various off-the-shelf systems that can be used. The data intelligence, etc. There are some companies also that they sell specific, for specific industries also. They come out and they sell some of the tools. But the bigger part is today the way the artificial intelligence is developing. I don't think in the auditing space we have those many used cases. I think in specific functions, like I spoke about drones, right, for physical verification. So if you evaluate certain types of drones, there are some types of drones that can be used for physical verification of inventories, and you can buy them, you can use them. Similarly, chatbots. The chatbot, there are some types of chatbots that can be configured for the needs for internal audit. They're not ready-made, but they can be configured and they can be built up for internal audit. Some of them are very interesting. But I would say that there is no very ready to use, because AI also depends on your business and your technology adoption in your organization also. So it is very, very contextual in that sense, and therefore it is very difficult to say that okay, which are the systems which are available off the shelves. But yes, there are some ERP systems also that have added auditing, like for example SAP GRC is an important tool, for role management, etc. There is certain amount of AI sitting in that module also, and various systems may have AI module, various auditing systems also. But I don't think they are really the kind of AI that we as internal auditors want to really use in terms of automation and some practical usage. So I have not seen too many of available off-the-shelf systems, but they many times have to be developed in the context, because it's a nascent stage right now for at least the auditors. I mean, businesses have been using it for a long, but for auditors, it's quite nascent. Chintan bhai.
Yeah, there are few websites which I have heard, UiPath and others, who provides very easily. Easily, it's very easy to use, and we can develop our own boards, which can be used for data analytics, where everything can be done very easily. You can cut short the process. It's kind of RPA, which can be done. So, do you feel that this kind of will be useful to us in internal audit, or may not be so much?
Very much. But as I said, so what does UiPath do? UiPath essentially will sell you a software license for a bot. It's not a ready to use for internal audit. You have to buy that bot, and then you have to configure that bot for the audit function. So it will do the task that you tell it to do, but you have to configure that. So it's not readily available. But as I said, all these technologies, UiPath, RPA, chatbots, conversational artificial, all these have to be, all of this will have to be brought and customized and configured to your environment, basically. So UiPath definitely, sells some very good state-of-art bots like Automation Anywhere, and even some of the low-code platforms. Nowadays, there's an emergence of very low-cost platforms like, even Jiffy, Jiffy AI. I'm sure many would have heard about it. But those are also the ones that are being used as low-code, low-cost or no-code, even no-code platforms. So RPA as such gives you license and a tool, but you have to use it and configure it to your environment.
Great. Yeah. So basically now, as AI has been top of town, and as you're mentioning that in the future, the use of AI is going to increase manifold. So the sampling technology or the use of samples may drastically reduce, or the manager may want that you to do 100% auditing. Now there's no need to do sample. You just sit upon the system and track everything which is possible, and then give complete report. Is it what is going to happen in the future?
Yes. So that is very much correct, Chintan bhai. Very, very correct that the usage of samples and the case for sample existed when there were certain limitations. Today, with the scalability, with the kind of scalability, speed, and efficiency and automation, this whole examination, you can go home and sleep and get the bots to basically check the numbers and check the details that you want them to do, and therefore it is a case for very much transcending beyond the sampling. So the full, increasingly there is an expectation that an auditor reviews the whole. In any case, even if you review sample, even if you review samples, you are still responsible for whole population. And if the technology is giving you that option, why not use it? It's just, a multiplier effect. It can, very well, it can do 100%. I mean, with the scalability and speed and efficiency.
Great. The one question from Nishit Bhai, he's asking that with the introduction, with the introduction of technology and AI, does the expectations from internal audit move beyond providing reasonable assurance and research in SIAs?
No, so to be honest with you, as I said, the whole auditing profession and the discipline has not kept enough pace with the technological developments and advancement. I don't think the standards expect more than reasonable. Even in the audit world, despite the usage of all of this, it's not, you can't go beyond, even with best of the transactions in place, you can still, even though you do complete audit, complete review, 100% checks, 100% reviews, I don't think the expectation can move beyond reasonable. It is always going to be, reasonable. You can't have an unreasonable expectation from an auditor.
Exactly. So expression gap is going to be there, which is going to be reasonable.
Yeah,
at all times.
The definition of, I will still say that the definition of what is reasonable will change. The context of reasonable is not going to change, but what is reasonable, that will definitely undergo change. So if you are saying that, okay, I used to review 5% samples and derive comfort, now at least you will be expected to do a lot more deeper and little more in depth, rather than saying that, okay, this is what is reasonable. And always it's a matter of professional judgment, right? What is reasonable, what is adequate.
Exactly. Bibal Bhai has asked question, is profession waiting for great disruption due to industrial revolution 4.0?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it sometimes many of us wonder also that, people are talking some really very, very advanced set of things. Like, I've also heard people saying with blockchain coming in, there'll be no audits. And because, everything is online and the entire transparency is also built up online. I have a slightly different view though. Auditing was always there 2,300 years ago. It was invented, by the way, it was invented in India. Kautilya's Arthashastra mentioned about auditing. And that time, no one else said about auditing independent audit. When Kautilya's Arthashastra said about auditing, it said that the kingdom has to be audited, independently audited, and not that kingdom, that the auditor should not be reporting to the king. It should be reporting to the, to the Praja administration. So it always existed even 2,300 years ago. With blockchain and AI and some of these things also, it is going to be there. Auditing, it will, the context of that audit will change from transactions, to the examination of technologies, fit for purpose technologies, whether the technologies are fit for purpose, whether there are any lacunas in the technologies, whether technology is going to help us enable achieving certain business objectives. That's the context which is going to change. But yes, it's going to massively change. The context is going to massively change. It's not going to be transaction auditing that will be allowed to prevail. It is going to be a lot more. It is going to be a lot more contextual to the fit for purpose and the meeting of objectives.
Absolutely. I think the last question from Raja Gopal, how AI is helpful to MSME sectors, because most of the auditors are depending upon the MSMEs.
You'll be surprised to see some of the MSMEs adopting the scale at which and the momentum at which they're adopting technologies and creating that difference. I think MSMEs, while they don't have enough know-how, while they lack, there's not enough bandwidth that they have or budgets that they have to invest in some of these technologies. But I think there is a case for even MSMEs. So if, let's say an MSME deploys a company of 200 crores of turnover, let's say they have 4 or 5, 6, 7 people finance team, that can be reduced to 2 or 3 people, and all of them doing, some really, some really strategic stuff of the core finance activity. You can basically, even in that environment, you can economically replace the human talent at a junior level.
A couple of questions more has come up. I hope it's okay.
Chintanmay, I have to actually rush. In fact, I'm sitting at, you know that there was some
I know. You mentioned
about
about
this session to be tomorrow, but it was today, and I'm actually in Delhi, so I'm sitting at a client's place and giving this, and you know that's why I was not able to immediately. What I'll do is, Chintanmay, what I'll do is, I have noted these questions. I'm seeing it in front of my screen. I will note this and I will send a reply to these questions to you. And then these can be circulated to the participants. I think we can do it that way if that's okay. And I'm definitely going to share the presentation. Chintanmay, you have the presentation which can.
I know. Obviously. I think Kartik, you covered fantastic, and a lot of things are there. The questions are popping up with me because you already open up a lot of things. You open up Pandora's box. So now for all of us to think and then what can be done further, because it's like ocean, and we are just understand there is ocean is available. So for us, a lot of things to be done. And I have with me the CA Kaushal Trivedi, who is the coordinator for this session. I request Kaushal to provide Hadi's sort of things.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. It was very enlightening to have Kartik Bhai giving us the topic artificial intelligence. He has explained to us the various multi-dimensional thing what AI can do with data. The progressive analysis, natural language processing, the benefits of AI, the estimated cost which the RPA is expected of, which we did not have any clue before that. What are the benefits of chatbots? Very good illustrative examples with respect to physical verification of inventory, data intelligence, what is expected out of internal audits, and the roadmap, and giving us examples where AI is currently being used, like in SAP GRC, and what all firms and entities have come up, like automation anywhere and stuff like that. So we thank Kartik Bhai for enlightening us on this topic, and it was great having you. And it was a very learning and an additional gaining session from all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaushal Bhai.
Thank you so much, Kartik Bhai. Thank you so much.
And thank you, participants. Thank you so much.
We'll invite you once again more.
Oh, thank you. Bye.
Pleasure having you.
Bye.